Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect the jury's back in the courtroom. Ms. Brady, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, we would call Patrick Herr.
Good afternoon. Could I have you raise your right? Solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Please be seated. Can you tell us your full name and please spell your first, middle, and last names?
Patrick, P-A-T-R-I-C-K, William, W-I-L-L-I-A-M, Herr, H-E-R-R.
Ms. Brady, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Herr. Can you please tell the jury where you were working in November of 2012?
I was working for Action Care Ambulance in Centennial.
And what did you do for Action Care Ambulance?
I was a paramedic.
Do you recall being dispatched to the Arapahoe County Jail on November 13th of 2012?
I do.
Can you tell the jury what you remember about that call?
The entire call? Or
What did you believe you were going to the jail for?
we were dispatched for an unknown medical emergency.
And when you got there, were you given a little more information about the nature of the call?
Yes.
What information were you given?
That Mr. Holmes was involved in some behavior over the weekend. He was not eating, not drinking, banging his forehead off of the wall and falling off of the bed backwards.
Anything about whether he was interacting with staff as much as he had been before? Do you remember anything about that?
His interaction with the staff there was reported that it had been decreasing throughout the weekend.
Decreasing?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the jail asking you to do?
To evaluate him and transport him to Denver Health for a CAT scan.
All right. Can you tell us what you observed when you first met Mr. Holmes?
He was standing, they walked him out of a solitary confinement cell, I'm guessing, and he had a vest, almost like a lead type, I guess the best way, like an x-ray type vest. And it's the first time I've ever seen him when they called it a suicide vest. And underneath that, he had some sort of a flak jacket as well. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but...
And when you say they escorted him out, who do you mean?
The prison guards.
Okay. Go ahead.
He had a very flat affect and appeared disheveled and parched.
Parched? Okay.
Yes.
Did you try and speak with Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, I made the first interaction with him.
And how was it? How was he at responding to you?
He smiled and did not respond verbally.
Okay. What kind of a smile was it?
It was a large smile, just teeth showing and very wide.
Was he responding to you at all verbally?
No.
Were you trying to ask him questions to sort of assess his condition?
Yes.
Was he taken to the ambulance?
He was taken to the ambulance.
How did he get to the ambulance?
On a stretcher.
And were you in the back of the ambulance during the ride or not?
I was not in the back.
What was your role?
I was the driver.
All right. Were there any assessments done of Mr. Holmes where he was asked to repeat something?
There was a neurological assessment for a Cincinnati stroke scale.
And what does that involve?
Looking for a unequal smile, any slurred speech, and any unilateral extremity deficits.
And was he asked to repeat a certain phrase?
He was asked to.
And did he do that?
He did.
And did you note any slurred speech?
No.
Did you note something else unusual, though?
The speech that we asked him to repeat, he repeated it repetitively throughout the course of the trip.
Did you tell him to keep repeating it?
Did not.
And what was that phrase?
You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
While you were the driver of the ambulance, could you still hear what was going on in the back of the ambulance?
Yes.
During the trip to the hospital, could you hear Mr. Holmes repeating that sentence?
Yes.
Could you hear any other noises coming from him?
He would moan occasionally.
Do you know whether any medical procedures were performed on Mr. Holmes in the back of the ambulance while you were driving?
None that I know of while I was driving.
Was he given an IV at any point in the ambulance?
He was.
Right, and what was that for?
To give fluid for dehydration.
And who was the paramedic who was in the back of the ambulance with Mr. Holmes during this trip?
Paramedic Jeremy Leadham.
And which hospital did you take Mr. Holmes to?
Denver Health.
And what happened once you got to the hospital? Where was Mr. Holmes taken?
They have a sally port behind the hospital, I think off of Bannock, that goes down into a holding area for emergency room, emergency department for prisoners. And we took him through the double doors and into a hallway there.
And did you go with Mr. Holmes during his trip into the hospital?
I did.
When you got to Denver Health, was he still repeating the phrase, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks"?
Occasionally, yes.
Can you estimate over what period of total time did Mr. Holmes repeat that phrase?
I can't, an hour and a half maybe.
Okay. Did Mr. Holmes ever make eye contact with you?
Yes.
Did he ever speak to you?
Not verbally, no.
Do you know how much fluid he got from the IV on the trip to the hospital?
500 milliliters.
Did you see any injuries to Mr. Holmes's head?
I did.
What did you see?
Hematoma on his forehead.
What is a hematoma?
It's a bruise, blood pooling under the skin.
Could you tell whether it was raised at all?
It was raised.
And approximately how big, do you think?
It's approximately golf ball sized.
Golf ball size?
Yeah.
Your Honor, can I have just a moment?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. The district attorney might have some questions too, okay?
Okay.
Mr. Edson, do you have any cross-examination?
I do not. Thank you, Judge.
All right. And the jury does not appear to have any questions for this witness. May this witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Any objection?
Thank you, sir.
All right, sir, thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Russell Martins.
Okay. Good afternoon. Can I have you raise your right hand so that I can administer an oath? If you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please be seated. Tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names.
My name is Russell Henry Martins, Russell, Henry Martins.
Mr. King?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon.
What do you do for a living, sir?
Currently, I work for Laramie County Sheriff's Office, Cheyenne, Wyoming, as a mental health counselor.
Okay. And did you previously work for the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department?
I did until January 1st of this year.
And in what capacity did you work there, sir?
My job title is classification specialist.
Okay. And what is a classification specialist in the context of the Arapahoe County Detention
In
Facility?
Arapahoe County, we determine housing, as well as we are the frontline mental health team.
Okay. And do you have what's your degree in?
I have a master's in clinical psychology.
And does that assist you in assessing the medical and psychiatric needs of inmates?
The psychiatric, yeah, not the medical. But
I want to direct your attention to 2012. Did you work in the detention facility here at that time in that capacity?
I did.
Do you recognize Mr. Holmes, who's seated over here?
Yes, I do.
And did you have some contact with Mr. Holmes during the early part of his incarceration?
I did.
And what was the purpose of your contact with Mr. Holmes, just generally speaking?
Just generally checking assessment of, since I was in charge of housing, mental health, just checking on him on initially a daily basis. Checking on his safety is.
I have for you, if you need it, sir, copies of the chart, which includes your notes from that period of time. If you need to refer to those, just let me know. May I approach Judge and just give them these in case he needs them?
Yes.
Please.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
I want to ask you some questions about some specific contacts that you had with Mr. Holmes, both early on in his incarceration, like late in July and early in August of 2012, and then in November of 2012. Is that acceptable with you?
Absolutely, yeah.
The first questions that I have involve your notes from July 29th, 2012. And this is page 65475 of Discovery for Counsel. On that time, at about 11:09 a.m., did you see Mr. Holmes at that point in time?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of meeting with him at that time?
Just assessing for his needs.
Okay. And where did you meet with him?
In his cell.
And is that MC1 cell that we've heard about down in the medical unit of the detention facility?
Correct.
And when you went in, what was Mr. Holmes doing, if you recall? Was he standing there, seated?
I believe, according to my notes, that he was laying down.
Okay. And how did he kind of present to you at that point in time? First of all, what kinds of questions or topics would you be talking about him or another inmate in that situation with at that point in time?
Just refer to my note real quick.
Absolutely. Feel free.
Looks like I just had a basic conversation of, did he need anything, or did he have any questions, was there anything he'd like for me to answer, would he like to meet me later in the day?
Is that a common thing that you would do for someone who is newly incarcerated?
Typical, yeah.
Okay. And how did he present to you when you went in to talk to him about that? What was his manner of presentation, if you will?
Nothing out of the ordinary that I recall or that I wrote down. Just a casual conversation. Looks like he was concerned about somebody that was perhaps yelling on the same side of the MC area. Apparently he'd heard somebody yelling earlier.
Okay. Someone yelling for help or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I recall it, based on this note, maybe another one, he was, I believe there's some guy, some person detoxifying off of alcohol. So
Sure. When you talked to him, did he present to you as dismissive with a flat affect? Do you remember that?
Into the leading nature of the question.
Sustained. And sir, if you would pull the microphone closer to you, please, to make sure we can all hear you. You can move the microphone. There you go.
Okay. It looks like I did, yeah.
Hold on, there's no question yet.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
How did he present to you when you asked him had this discussion with him? What was his manner of presentation to you?
Looks like he presented with mostly a flat affect.
What does that mean based upon your experience and training as a mental health professional?
Non-emotional. So he didn't express himself emotionally in any way. Okay. So no anger, no sadness, no, just nothing.
Anything else that you recall about that encounter that stood out in your mind?
Not that I recall.
Okay. On the 31st of July, you had another, you had a conversation, I think, strike that. It looks like a conversation with someone from the jail staff, so I won't ask you about that. On the 31st, though, you did, again, go in to assess Mr. Holmes. Did you do that on that date as well, the 31st of July, 2012?
Yes.
And when you asked him how he was doing, did he respond affirmatively, or?
He did. He said, asked him how he was doing. He said he was good.
Okay. Was he oriented ×3, if you know?
He was.
Okay, and what does that mean?
He knew where he was, he knew who he was, and he knew the date, time.
Okay. How do you assess that? Just by asking?
I asked those questions.
What did you notice about his eye contact? Did he make eye contact with you?
He had good eye contact. So in my, he just had normal eye contact with me. So when I looked at him and I asked him the questions, he just continued that. He didn't turn away, or just a normal conversation.
Did he or did he not at times look upwards and pause prior to answering some of your questions?
He did.
Was he talkative with you? I mean, did he answer your questions with narrative responses, or did he just basically answer yes or no to the questions you asked him?
I think in this particular case, there wasn't a lot of yeses or nos. There were some statements. So he answered in sentences, I guess, in this case,
Okay.
looks like. Oh, I wrote, inmates' responses are mostly yes or no, so,
Are mostly yes or no, is that right?
correct.
And so, I'm going through your notes here, so, when we get to, does it also indicate that whether or not Mr. Holmes was polite and cooperate, but did not initiate any questions?
Correct, yes. He was polite and cooperative.
Okay. On the 1st of August, did you again meet with him to assess his needs?
I did.
And was it a similar type of situation where he had no specific questions or concerns?
Yes.
Was there a time during November of 2012 when there was a change, at least from your perspective, a change in the demeanor of Mr. Holmes? And I'm talking about mid-November 2012, if you remember.
Yes, I'm looking for the note, but yes.
It's 11/11. It's the first note, I think. Did you find that? I think they kind of go backwards in time.
I have 11:13. No. 11:12.
I can help here.
There it is, 11:11.
Thank you. Was that at 12:02?
Yes,
Would that be 12:02 in the afternoon or in the morning?
that would be the afternoon.
Okay.
That's when I wrote the note,
Okay.
at least.
Did you then see Mr. Holmes to assess his needs at that point?
I did.
And was he inside MC1, his normal cell, or was he inside a BC cell on the other side, the rubber cells?
He was in one of the rubber cells, BC5.
Okay. And what were you assessing him for at that point?
He was placed on a suicide watch. I was assessing him for needs, whether he's suicidal.
Okay. Did you ask him why he was on suicide watch, if he knew why?
I did.
Did he know why, or how did he respond?
He responded, "I'm scared of what I will do."
Okay. Did you ask him to explain that?
I did.
And what did he say?
I'm trying to keep it all together.
Did you say, I'm trying to keep it all together?
Correct.
Okay. And did you ask him to explain that further?
I did.
And what did he say?
He said the system, all the systems.
When he said the system, all the systems, did you ask him if he felt like that was a lot for one person to do?
I did.
And did he respond?
He did. He said yes.
Did you ask him why he had fallen back in his cell?
I did.
And how did he respond?
He said, "I do not know that you are real."
Now, when he said to you, I do not know that you are real, how did he appear to you based upon your experience and your...
He appeared authentic and showed what appeared to be fear or nervousness based on his facial expressions and trembling voice.
At this point in time, did you ask him how you could help to understand if you were real for him?
I did.
And what did he say?
He said, "If you shook my hand."
And did you explain that that wouldn't be permitted by the deputies under those circumstances?
I did.
Could he answer any questions at that point in time so you could determine whether he was oriented times 3?
No.
The next note I would like to refer you to would be just the next day, sir, on the 12th of November, 2012 at 11:53.
Okay.
Did you again assess him in BC5?
I did.
And what was his condition when you saw him there?
He was laying naked on his left side near the door.
And what did you do, if anything, sir?
I asked him what we could do to help him.
And what did he say?
You could give me water.
Did you ask him if he was thirsty?
I did.
And what did he say?
He said, I don't know where the water is.
At that point in time, did he present as confused and seem to have difficulty responding to questions?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Did he appear to be confused to you, or did he not appear to be confused?
He appeared to be confused.
Did he appear to have difficulty responding to questions, or did he not have difficulty responding to questions?
He appeared to have difficulty responding to questions.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
That's all I have for now. Thank you, sir.
Cross-examination, Mr. Orman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to ask you now about some of the dates that Mr. King asked you about, and I think at least one where he did not. So let's talk about that first date that you discussed on direct examination, July 29th, 2012. And I think the note that you wrote, you at least wrote it at around 11:09 a.m. Would it help you to refresh your memory, to just take another quick look at that?
Sure.
May he do so, Your Honor?
Yeah.
So why don't you just take a look at that, then I'm going to ask you some questions about it.
Okay.
So when you started the conversation with the defendant, this was in his cell, is that right?
Yes.
And you started talking to him, he asked you, are you Russ? Correct?
Yes.
And is that the name you go by, Russ?
Yeah.
And did people in a jail call you that, or do they call you your last name?
Russ.
So somehow he knew your name was Russ and was able to ask you if that was your name.
Correct.
Then he asked you, does everybody meet with classifications, correct?
Correct.
And, well, does everybody meet with classifications?
Yes, eventually.
And you mentioned when Mr. King was asking you questions that he apparently had some thoughts about another person who had been yelling in the pod. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And is that the right word, pod?
No, we wouldn't consider that a pod. I guess we just consider that medical housing.
The unit, would that be?
Would be good.
All right. So, and he asked you specifically, did you help that person who was yelling for help? Is
Yes.
that right? And this again was July 29th.
Correct.
And then he explained that this person had been yelling a couple of days ago. Is that right?
Correct.
When you had this conversation with the defendant on July 29th, he had good eye contact with you, right?
Correct.
But you mentioned a flat affect, right?
Yes.
That means like not emotional?
Yeah.
But at the same time, he appeared at least to be annoyed with you, correct?
Yes, that's what I wrote.
And dismissive of you.
Yes.
Again, that was on the 29th, correct?
Correct.
You told him to contact deputies if he had any questions or concerns. And did he indicate that he would do that if he needed to?
I don't recall.
Let's go to July 31st. And it looks like on that date you have two notes that you wrote, one from 2:37 p.m. and then another one from 2:52. Would it help you to remember what happened when I ask you questions to take a look at those first?
Yes, please.
May he do so, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just take a look and tell me when you're done reading.
Okay.
So on that date, first, let's go to the later note, which sort of goes back to something a little earlier. He had escorted by court deputies, you saw, and returned from court without incident, correct?
Correct.
And then also on July 31st, you had a conversation with him to assess his needs, and you asked him if he had any, and he said he didn't have any needs or questions for you, right?
Just as a clarification, that was a late entry note.
Okay.
It's actually the day before from 7:30.
Okay. So, all right, so the first thing I asked you about was the day before,
Correct.
the coming and going to from court.
Correct.
This, what I'm asking you about, is actually the 31st.
Okay.
Is that right?
Correct.
All right. So you asked him if he had any needs or questions, and he told you that he did not, correct?
Correct.
And you asked him how he was, and his response to you was good. Is that right?
Correct.
And again, he had good eye contact with you, but sometimes would pause before answering a question and maybe look up and then answer the question.
Correct.
But he was able to answer your questions, correct?
Yes.
And he smiled at you on July 31st, right?
Yes.
You had a conversation with him about how, if he was aware of whether or how he could request books from the library through the kite system, right?
Yes.
And he indicated that he was aware of that.
Yes.
He was able to answer that question.
Yes, he was.
He actually was able to tell you that he knew that he had a court date coming up that Friday, right?
Yes.
And although he would generally answer questions yes or no, if you asked him an open-ended question, he would give an open-ended or appropriate response, correct?
Yes.
You asked him how much he was sleeping, and he essentially said, well, I need a timer to figure that out, right?
Yes.
Is there a clock in that cell?
No.
Is he allowed to have a watch?
No.
He was polite and cooperative with you, correct? Is that a yes? I didn't hear
Yes,
you. I'm
yes.
sorry. And you asked him if he had any other concerns. He said no, correct?
Correct.
But he did indicate that he knew how to use the kiosk system to make any requests, correct?
Correct.
I would like to go to August 1st of 2012, and just for your reference, I believe the time of the note that you wrote is 3:23 p.m. Do you have that?
Yes.
Would it help to answer my questions and remember if you could take a look at that first?
Yes.
May he do so, Your Honor?
Yes.
Tell me when you're done.
Okay. I'm done.
So at some point on that date, you asked him how his day was going, and his response to you was doing good.
Yes.
You commented to him that he was not much of a talker because he would answer questions generally yep or no, right?
Correct.
And his response to you was that sometimes he is a talker, correct?
Correct. He said sometimes I am.
You asked him if he felt suicidal on that date, August 1st, and he said he did not, correct?
Correct.
The next date I want to ask you about is August 14th of 2012, and it looks like the note that you wrote on August 14th is at 1:46 p.m. Do you have that?
I do.
Would it help to answer my questions if you could read that first and refresh your memory?
Yes.
May he do so, Your Honor?
Yes.
Go take a look and tell me when you're done.
I'm done.
So on this date, you see him typing at that kiosk system, correct?
Yes.
Now, where's that kiosk system in relation to his cell?
I guess leaving his cell, it's probably 15, 20 feet to his right on the opposite wall,
Now, he doesn't just have access to this all the time, right?
just when his door is open
Is that called the timeout?
during his timeout.
And he was sitting there or standing there. How does that work? Is there a chair or do you stand up?
Either. I don't recall whether he's sitting or standing.
So you saw him at the kiosk and you asked him how he was doing. He said he was doing okay.
Correct.
You asked him if he needed anything. He said no.
Correct.
And he had the same usual affect that you'd seen him with before, correct?
Correct.
He'd had a professional visit and then was brought back without incident.
Correct.
And this again is the 14th of August, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated you had a discussion with him that he would send a kite if he needed anything else, correct?
Correct.
Now, I asked you about one of these notes where you had asked the defendant if he was suicidal. Did you ask him that on a regular basis?
Yes.
And did he ever tell you he was suicidal?
No.
Can I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions on cross-examination. Thank you.
All right, is there any redirect?
There is not, thank you.
All right, and the jury does not appear to have any questions for this witness. May he be released from his subpoena?
Yes, he may.
Any objection?
None, Your Honor.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Call your next witness, please.
Next call is Detective Craig Clark.
Good afternoon. You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Please be seated. Please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names.
It's Craig, C-R-A-I-G. I'm sorry, do you want a middle name too? Is that what you
If
said?
you have a middle name.
Yeah, it's Galen, G-A-Y-L-A-N, last is Clark, C-L-A-R-K.
Good afternoon, Detective Clark.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Where do you work?
Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, and have you testified in this trial before?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How long have you been with the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office?
15 years.
Okay. And are you a detective and a member of the Arapahoe County Sheriff Office Bomb Squad?
Yes, I am.
Okay. What I'd like to do is I would like to move to the early morning hours of July 20th. Did you go to the theater?
I did.
Okay. And in your capacity as a member of the bomb squad, did you and a team work on a white Hyundai outside of the theater, Mr. Holmes' car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you operate the robot that was used to process or interrogate that car?
I did.
I want to just talk to you specifically about getting into the trunk or the hatchback of that car. Did you have to use the car key in order to open that trunk or hatchback?
Yes.
Okay. And to do that, did you have a member of your unit go over to the car and pull a set of keys off the roof of the vehicle or the top of the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. And then did that member of the bomb squad then put that key from that set of keys, or put a key from that set of keys into the lock of the trunk?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And then did you use the robot arm to actually turn that key?
That's correct.
And you were able to turn the key and you were able to unlock the vehicle?
That's correct.
Now, in the process of doing that, was that key damaged?
I believe it was bent a little bit.
Okay. And so if there is on that set of keys a single key that's misshapen, that was the result of the work that you did using the bomb robot?
Yes, ma'am. I haven't seen the key since, so I didn't see it after the fact, but I would agree if there's a key that's bent, that would have been from the robot.
Okay. And is that because of the weight of the trunk and the use of the robot arm in order to unlock the key?
No, it wouldn't be from the weight of the trunk. It was just the twisting on the arm. If it wasn't 100% square with the locking mechanism itself, that it would probably bend it at that point.
Okay. I may have a moment.
Yes?
That is all I have.
Okay. Any cross-examination?
And Investigator Clark, to be clear, you haven't seen the keys and you don't recall whether in fact there even is a bent key, is that right?
That's correct.
And with regard to the robot, it's trying to manipulate a key with what amounts to big metal pincers, correct?
That's correct.
So if it would be bent in some process of that, that would simply be because it's a difficult job for a robot to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any redirect?
No.
And there are no questions from the jury. May this witness be released from his subpoena.
No objection.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, sir, thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, we call Angela Benford.
Good afternoon. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated. Please tell us your full name and spell your first and middle and last names.
Angela Jean Benford, ANGELAJEANBENFORD.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Is it Investigator Benford?
It is.
Okay. And you've previously testified?
I have.
Okay. And you are a crime scene investigator with the Aurora Police Department?
Yes.
How long have you done that?
17 years.
I want to just draw your attention to the work that you did processing Mr. Holmes' vehicle following his arrest.
Okay.
Now, you and another crime scene investigator went to Mr. Holmes' car, processed the car, searched the car on August 3rd of 2012. Is that right?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And you previously testified about some of the items that you found inside the car, like some, like 2 magazines and some cartridges. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And what I want to do is I want to talk to you about an item that was found that was photographed but not collected.
Okay.
And I'm going to approach with what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 84. If I may approach the witness, and I'll show the prosecution the exhibit.
Yes.
Investigator Benford, are you familiar with that photograph?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And does that photograph reflect several of the items that were found originally inside of Mr. Holmes' car that were photographed?
Yes.
Okay. And is that an accurate representation of those items?
It is.
Okay. Judge, I'd move for admission of Defendant Exhibit 84.
Any objection?
I don't object, Your Honor.
Without objection, it is admitted and it may be published.
Thank you, Your Honor. If we could please publish 2226. Now referring to Defense Exhibit 84, I want to draw your attention, and if we could call out the brown box labeled black and mild. Now, this is one of the items found in Mr. Holmes' vehicle. Are cigarellos, is that the name on the box?
It is.
Okay. And are those like little cigars?
Correct.
Okay. And looking at the call out or looking at the photograph, does that package of cigarellos, does that appear to be a full pack or partial pack?
It appears to be a partial pack.
Meaning some are missing?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Is there any cross-examination?
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, thank you.
All right. May this witness be released from her subpoena?
She may.
Okay. And for the record, there are no juror questions. Any objection to her being released from her subpoena?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you, investigator.
Thank you.
Call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, the defense calls Detective Gordon Madonna.
Good afternoon. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, all right, please be seated. I know you testified before, Detective, but if you could tell us your full name again, and if you don't want to use your middle name, you can use your middle initial again. I know you're sensitive about that. Go ahead.
It's Gordon, G-O-R-D-O-N, Madonna, M-A-D-O-N-N-A, middle initial G.
All right, you may proceed, Ms. Spengler.
Thank you. Detective Madonna, I know you recently testified. Just to remind us, you work for the Aurora Police Department as well as the Rocky Mountain Regional Center Forensic Laboratory, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And are you a digital forensic examiner?
Yes.
And again, just as a reminder, do you extract, part of your job duty is extracting data from and analyzing computers, iPhones, iPods?
Yes.
Okay. And in this case, you actually processed and extracted data from Mr. Holmes' computers as well as his iPhone and his iPod, is that right?
Yes, myself and Detective Liker.
Okay. And just as a reminder, you've certainly been trained in computer forensics as well as removal procedures and how to process computers and iPhones, is that right?
Yes.
I just have a few some follow-up questions related to some of the information that was admitted as some prosecution exhibits and some questions that they had. And I want to start out with the iPhone. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Okay, and I'm going to approach with what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 85, and I will show the prosecution as I approach. Now, do you recognize what I have handed you, which is labeled Defense Exhibit 85?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is that a photograph, an accurate photograph of the iPhone that you processed?
Yes.
Okay. And is that, and also contained in that D85, is there the contacts that were taken out of the iPhone?
Yes.
Okay. And just to talk about that a little bit more in depth, when you extracted the data from the iPhone, some of the information that you got were the contacts within the iPhone. Can you just explain for the jury what are contacts?
Contacts are basically phone numbers, names, things like that. So when you have your phone and you want to call, for sake of argument, Mary, and you put in Mary's phone number or address, those are contacts.
Okay. And is that a fair representation of the contacts that you took from the phone or extracted from the iPhone.
Yes.
Judge, I'd move for admission of Defense Exhibit 85.
Is there any objection?
Just a brief white error, if I may, Judge.
All right, you move over to you.
Just one question. Detective Madonna, are those the entirety of the contacts from the iPhone?
No.
Judge, with that clarification, I have no objection.
All right, without objection, D-TR-85 is admitted and may be published.
And if we could please put up Defense Exhibit is 3043, and that would be Defense Exhibit 85. And if we could call out the bottom portion, or the bottom two-thirds, right where it says contacts. Oh, that whole portion, yes. All right. Now, this is the first page of the contacts list, and next to column 2, or row 2, there's an A. And is an A significant for, that's how the phone number, the email addresses are entered into the phone, is that right?
Well, normally you have a name to go along with that.
Okay. And so underneath, in that row, we can see that Lynn Fenton at ucdenver.edu is an email address that was listed as an A contact, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And we can also see that that was deleted, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, there's some additional contacts. We've seen a contact for an apartment and for UCD, for Bobo and Chrissy. Can we move to the second page, please? And if we could call out the top portion, the top half of that page. And this is a continuation of the contacts? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then moving on to row 8, we see a Feinstein listed, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And then right under that, we see Fenton listed?
Yes.
Okay. And next to Fenton, in row 9, we have a mobile number or phone number as well as a email address, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And the phone number was deleted, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And then, but above that, for Feinstein, we have an email address as a listed contact in Mr. Holmes' iPhone, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And that email address has not been deleted?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions regarding the iPhone. I want to talk to you about the analysis or the work that you did on the cyber power computer.
Yes.
And a photograph of the cyber power computer has already been admitted as evidence, so I'd like to, if we could just take a look at that to get ourselves oriented. If we can look at, publish, Your Honor, what has already been admitted as a prosecution exhibit, and that's 3065.
Yes.
It's in our number 3065. And is that a photograph of the cyber power tower?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And when you extract data from a computer, were you able to determine, at least for the cyber power, the activity dates, or the dates that this cyber power was active?
Yes.
Okay, and give us those dates, please. Sort of the time frame.
Trying to do it from memory, April 26, 2012 to, I want to say, July 19th or 20th, somewhere there.
Okay, and so what we know about the cyber power is that the operating system was installed on April 26, 2012?
Yes.
Okay, and we know that the last login time was July 19th of 2012?
That sounds correct, yes.
Okay, and so based on your understanding of the information in the record, this computer was used from April 26, 2012 through July 19th, 2012?
Yes.
Okay. And then the Lenovo Tower, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, that last login time was April 25th, 2012.
That sounds about right.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about some of the exhibits that were already admitted by the prosecution but not shown yet, and they relate to the screenshots that were taken that reflect some of the web activity on the cyber power. Do you recall talking with the prosecution about that?
Yes.
Okay. If I may approach, Your Honor, the middle of the courtroom. And some of the information that was recovered from the cyber power involved some web activity, and we've heard about some of that web activity. And I know that related to some purchases and weapons. But also, the web activity also reflects some philosophical type searches and Wikipedia pages, and those are the ones that I'd like to talk about now. Do you recall finding those and taking screenshots of those web pages?
Yes, I recall seeing them.
Okay. And Your Honor, these have already been admitted as exhibits, and that's in People's 424A.
Okay,
And we'd ask now to publish some of these screenshots.
go ahead.
Okay. If we could please see 3077. Now, this reflects a Bing search for free will, is that right?
Yes.
And if we could see 3078. And then a Wikipedia site for free will.
Yes.
3079. We then have a Bing search for determinism. Is that right? And 3080. Please. And and then a Wikipedia site for determinism.
Yes.
3081, please. And then we have a Wikipedia site for fractal, a math term.
Correct.
3082, please. Then we have a Bing search for probabilistic determinism.
Yes.
And then 3083. A Wikipedia entry for B.F. Skinner.
Yes.
And each of these screenshots are contained in People's 424B. Is that correct?
Yes.
I should say A, excuse me. 3084, please. We have a search for mechanistic determinism.
Yes.
And then 3085, please. And a Bing search for probabilistic determinism.
Yes.
And 3086, please. And then an entry for the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy titled Probabilistic Causation.
Yes.
See 3087, please. We're back to a Bing search for fatalism.
Yes.
3088, please. And a Wikipedia entry for fatalism.
Yes.
3089, please. And then a Wikipedia entry for predictability.
Yes.
3090, please. A Bing search for fate.
Correct.
3091, please. Wikipedia entry for destiny.
Correct.
3092, please. Wikipedia entry for compatibilism.
Yes.
3093, please. And a Bing search for probabilistic determinism again.
Yes.
3094, please. And selectionistic determinism.
Yes.
395, please. causal determinism,
Yes.
3096, please. And back to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy with the title Causal Determinism.
Correct.
3097, please. We have a search for free will mixed with determinism.
Yes.
3098, please. And then a Christian Clarity Review that is titled, in part, Mixing Free Will with Determinism Creates a Caste System,
Yes.
and 3099. And then this is a second page of Free Will Creating a Caste System in this Christian Clarity Review.
Yes.
So these are also, thank you, web searches and Wikipedia hits that were found on the cyber power. And again, the time frame for the cyber power is between April 26, 2012 and July 19th, 2012.
That is correct.
Okay. And there's no way to tell, not for any of this web activity that's been talked about over the weeks regarding the cyber power and these particular screenshots, whether that web activity took place on April 26th or 27th, or whether it took place on July 19th.
Not from those screenshots, no.
Okay. And not related to that particular web activity coming out of that, related to the exhibits that People's 424.
I'm not sure I understand where you're coming from. Sorry.
Okay. The Firefox session artifacts are not dated.
That is correct.
And all of People's 424 that we just talked about and that was introduced earlier are all Firefox session artifacts.
Yes.
Okay. And so that web activity, we don't know exactly when it took place, whether it was April 26th, July 19th, or somewhere in between.
Not from looking at those, no.
Okay. Also contained within that web activity was some WebMD.com activity, and that's also already been introduced, Your Honor, if I may publish.
Yes.
We've got 3070, please. And this is a WebMD symptom checker, is that right?
I see that, yes.
Okay. And then if we could see 3071. And this relates to the Bipolar Disorder Health Center and bipolar disorder question, what is it? Is that right?
I see that webpage too, but I do not recognize where they came from.
Okay. Is it not in, it's in People's 424 as well. I know that's a thick exhibit.
Is there a page number or approximation of where it would come from?
I don't think that there are page numbers I can approach if that would help.
Please. I think the reason why is you're not showing the whole screen on here, so.
And if you look at let me try it this way. If you look at People's 424A, or excuse me, B, does that contain the data that underlies the screenshots of 424B?
Yes, this would be the Firefox session store artifacts.
Okay, and if you look at the second page of that document, do you see the activity from WebMD?
Entry number 236, WebMD, yes,
Okay,
and 243.
okay. And it's your understanding that the data that was introduced relates to the particular screenshots within that exhibit, even though I just can't put my finger on those 3 pages right now?
Yes, and I
Okay.
think it's because of the screenshot that I'm looking at, it's not showing the entirety of it, so.
Okay. And if we could see 3072. And is that also, if you look back to that data, does that connect to the data on page 2 of People's 424? B.
372?
I'm sorry, no, page 2 of People's 424B, reflecting that WebMD activity.
And entry number 243?
I believe so. There's only 2 entries there.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. All right. And that connects to the WebMD Bipolar Disorder Health Center?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And we also see reflected within the web activity on the cyber power some activity on yugo.com. Is that right?
I don't recall specifically.
Okay.
If you see it.
Your Honor, if I may approach.
Yes.
Yes.
And does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay, and Your Honor, these have also already been introduced, these screenshots in People's 424, and I would ask to publish a few of them.
From 424A again.
That would be 424A.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not going to show, we're not going to publish, I don't publish all of the Yugo screenshots, but you were able to identify them in the exhibit, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. If we could see 3104, please. Okay. And this also reflects web activity in a screenshot that you took?
Yes.
Okay. And 3106. And this is an umbrella sword also reflecting web activity that you took from the cyber tower?
Yes.
In 3103? This fighting fan, another activity, web activity that was taken from the cyber power?
Yes.
And 3139. And this ball and chain, more web activity from the cyber tower?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And this web activity taking place sometime between, thank you, April 26th of 2012 and July 19th of 2012.
Yes.
And it could be as late as July 19th, 2012.
Correct.
Now, also on the cyber power, in the report, did you generate a report related to what was taken out of the, or found in the cyber power?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And within your reports that you generate, do you bookmark particular items that you think may be of interest to the person who submitted the request for the search of the electronic or computer in this instance?
Yes.
Okay. And in regards to the cyber power, did you and Detective Leiker bookmark depression in that report?
I recall that, yes.
Okay. And was that bookmark depression, or did you bookmark that word depression because depression and a URL related to an article on depression, publication number 4, was that found on the cyber power?
It was found on the CyberPower, yes.
Okay. Meaning that URL was found on the CyberPower.
Yes.
Okay. And that URL, if you take the entire URL and you put it into a browser, you, at least as of a few days ago, came back with a hit on the National Institute of Mental Health. Is that right?
Let me back up for a minute. Does everybody know what a URL is?
That's a good point. Why don't you tell us that?
Okay, URL stands for Universal Resource Locator. It's kind of like a post office address, so if you want to go to a particular site or something like that, you put that in your browser and it will take you to that web server for that particular page.
And would looking at the actual data related to that depression bookmark be helpful in describing what you mean?
Yes, it would.
Okay. Your Honor, may we publish, I don't need to admit, and let me show the witness, the data related to the depression bookmark?
Has that been admitted already?
It has not. I can move to admit it.
Is there any objection?
I need to see what it is.
And I will just mark it, Your Honor, as Defense 86.
Okay. Ms. Spengler, is your request to show it so that the witness can explain what he's referring to
That's correct.
and can explain his testimony?
That's right.
All right. Is there any objection to him doing that?
I apologize, I was looking at this exhibit.
She's attempting to show it so that the witness can explain his testimony.
Understood, and I do not have an objection to DTR 86, Judge.
All right. It may be used as a demonstrative exhibit, so you may publish it.
And Your Honor, while I've gone ahead and marked it, I will just go ahead and show the district attorney a second page and approach the witness with what's now been marked as Defense 86.
Okay.
I would object to the second page.
Yes. Are you intending to publish the second page as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Would counsel please approach? All right, Ms. Spengler, you may proceed.
Detective Madonna, I've handed you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 86. Does that reflect both the data related to the depression bookmark found on the cyber tower, as well as a screenshot of a web page?
Yes, excuse me, yes, it does.
Okay. And since people have not objected, in order to just explain the next few questions that I have for you, if we could publish the first page of that exhibit, since I will be moving for admission of that, and the district attorney has no objection. And is that all right, Your Honor?
The first page, you don't have any objection to the,
Objection to the first page, I do have the objection to the second page.
all right, and you're moving its admission now?
Of the first page? Yes.
Okay, the first page is admitted,
And
and you may publish it.
thank you, Your Honor. 3062, please. And this is a D86. $30.62. I won't be able to publish it. I think I wrote a number down incorrectly. Let me ask you about the URL. Does that URL relate to the is that URL www.nimh?
That's the start of it, yes.
Okay. And if you put that URL into a browser, does the screenshot or that is attached to Defense Exhibit 86, is that what comes up?
If you put that into the browser, then if that page still exists, it'll come up.
Okay. And recently, did we put that URL into a browser, and is that what's the second page of 86, is that what came up on the computer?
Recently, yes.
Okay. And what came up on the computer, does it connect back to the URL in that it National Institute for Mental Health?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And then if we go down the URL, we go to we see the word publications and then depression as well?
Correct.
Okay. If we could then turn to page 2, which is 3146, please. And when we put that URL into the browser recently, this is what comes up.
Okay. As noted in previous testimony, this created bona fide access date for this file was 6/26 of 2012.
Was that June 26 of 2012?
Yes.
And that's for the reflected activity of this
Yes.
URL? Okay.
And as we mentioned with the previous screenshots were taken several days afterwards. This one was almost 3 years after the fact, so I can't say whether this is the exact web page that would have existed at that time, or I can't say that it wasn't.
Sure, sure. Thank you for that. That was my next question.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Now I want to talk about the Lenovo computer. That's also a tower computer, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And the Lenovo was a computer with a last login date of April 25th, 2012, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Judge, may I approach with defendants 87?
Yes.
I'll show the district.
Would counsel please approach for just a moment about scheduling? Actually, Ms. Spengler, let's just proceed and see if we can get it done.
Okay. Detective, do you recognize that photograph as a picture of the Lenovo Tower?
Yes.
Okay, one of Mr. Holmes's computers that you processed. And before we get to the documents behind that picture, first I wanted to ask you whether or not you recovered any web searches in the Lenovo.
Yes.
Okay. I want to just direct your attention to a search on February 26th or 25th of 2012. Out of the web history, did you find a search within the web, on the internet, for nervous breakdown?
We pretty much ran what's a tool, it's called an Internet Evidence Finder on that, just like the other computers and so forth. It recovered that type of data, yes.
Okay, and did I draw your attention earlier this week to that search, and you indicated that that reflected data that you recovered from the Lenovo Tower?
Yes.
Okay. And is that information that you recovered and also contained in the report contained in Defense Exhibit 87?
Some of it, yes.
Okay, just related to the nervous breakdown search, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And then also part of Defense 87 is a series of bookmarks, is that right?
Yes, you can call them bookmarks.
Okay, and those bookmarks are Firefox bookmarks, similar to the bookmarks that were introduced earlier as evidence found on the CyberPower, correct?
Yes.
When I say similar, I don't mean similar in content, I just mean similar to, a bookmark is something, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that if somebody is looking at a web page, they can bookmark that web page, and so it is identifiable either by an icon or a tab later on, is that right?
Yes, so that you can return to that page, yes.
Okay, and you recovered Firefox bookmarks both from the CyberPower and the Lenovo?
Yes.
Okay, and the ones recovered from the Lenovo are attached to D87?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for admission of D87.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, it is admitted and it may be published.
Okay, and if we could just publish the search that was done. And that would be 3156, please. And we can see here a string for Bing.com search and then see the term nervous breakdown, if we could call that out. And then the date, we're talking about February 27th of 2012. Is that in UTC time?
Yes.
Okay, and so in order to get to Colorado time, we would subtract 7 hours?
At that time, yes.
Okay. Thank you. And then finally, I wanted to just talk to you about some additional bookmarks, Firefox bookmarks that were recovered on the CyberPower that were not introduced earlier. And if I may approach with what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 88,
You may.
and I'll show the prosecution. Now, what I handed you, does that reflect all of the recovered Firefox web activity bookmarks on the CyberPower, or the computer that was used in April to July of 2012?
No, not all of them. No.
Okay, does it reflect many of them?
Quite a few, yes.
Okay, and does it reflect more than, include the ones submitted, or excuse me, introduced by the prosecution?
Now you're trying to test my memory. I don't know quantitative-wise, but seems like there's a few more, yes.
Okay. And specifically, we see a bookmark, I'd move for admission, Your Honor, of Defense Exhibit 89.
Any objection?
No objection?
All right, it is submitted.
And prior to May 10th, when we see the first bookmark on the People's Exhibit, do we see a bookmark on April 26th for getting started?
Yes.
Okay. And that relates to the computer activity?
Yes.
Okay. And then do we see, close in time to that, a bookmark for Netflix?
Yes.
And then a close in, and what's that date?
For record number 3, Netflix is April 27, 2012.
Okay. And then the next in time, what is that bookmark?
What is the number? Item number that you're referring to?
I don't have the item numbers in front of me. Do you see a Hulu
Yes.
entry?
Okay.
And what is that date?
That would be April 28, 2012.
Okay. And is it fair to say that in terms of the bookmarks that take place from May 10th through July 19th or July 14th, there are no bookmarks related to weapons, related to gear, that was found on the Lenovo computer that was used up to April of 2012.
I'm trying to remember the Lenovo. I believe that we didn't have any times past April, and I'm guessing 26 without seeing my report.
Right, right. And we've got, the bookmarks are now in evidence, but if you look at those bookmarks, those deal with real estate and school and baseball cards, is that right?
Some of them, yes.
Okay. Scholarships, interfolio, that type of thing?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, cross-examination, Mr. Edson.
Good afternoon, Detective Madonna.
Good afternoon.
As part of your forensic data extraction, did you also extract data from a Toshiba laptop?
Yes, I did.
And that Toshiba laptop, you previously testified that was one of the computers that was that you conducted the forensic analysis on, correct?
Yes.
That Toshiba laptop also had some web searches associated with it, is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you have an opportunity to review some of those web searches before you came in here to testify today?
Yes.
Yes. All right, the objection is overruled. Detective, unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask you to return tomorrow if you're available. So your subpoena is continued until tomorrow morning, okay? 8:40, thank you. All right, members of the jury, it's 5 till 5, so we're going to go ahead and adjourn. There's a new judge being sworn in today, not sworn at. We wait till they take the bench before we start swearing at judges. But all judges try to attend swearing in, since I'm going to try to attend the swearing in for the new judge, and that's at 5 o'clock, so I have 5 minutes to get there. So I want to make sure that you remember the admonishments. All of them apply tonight and overnight, and then get some rest tonight, and I'll see you first thing tomorrow morning. All right? Thank you. Please be seated. The record should reflect the jury has exited the courtroom. Have a good evening, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow. The court will be in recess. Thank you.